Babul I'rab, the chapter of I'rab. Our sheikhs say that only Arabic has I'rab, and that I'rab doesn't have a translation because no other language has it. Uh, so what I would say here, in an attempt to translate these things, is perhaps the closest thing English has to I'rab is what they call case. But really, it's not I'rab in English because, for what we'll see here, he says, Al-i'rabu huwa taghyiru awakhir al-kalim. I'rab is the changing of the endings of the words. لاختلاف العوامل الداخلة عليها, due to the varying agents that come upon them. And you know that if he means here that come in front of them, if that's what he means, then he's just being easy for the beginner. Or else it just means whichever word is influencing it, wherever it might be.
نعم.
لفظا أو تقديرا, verbally expressed, pronounced change of the endings of the words, or an estimated one that means intended. All right. So he says i'rab is the changing of the endings of the words. So that we don't have that in English. But from what I can see, the closest that we have is the shifting pronouns. The different pronouns you use for different case. So you say he or him. So one of them is basically would be in Arabic terms, one of them is marfu' and one of them is mansub or majroor. He, that's going to be marfu'. Him, that's mansub or majroor. And like that, I, that's the marfu'. Me, that's the mansub or the majroor. In Arabic, what shows that relationship between the words in all throughout the language, pretty much, not restricted to pronouns, is i'rab. So by this i'rab, we're going to know what's the subject of the sentence, what's the object of the verb, what's the object of the preposition. And even if we shift those around, we might put them in unconventional sequences and still we'll be able to determine that. Or at least even see it if it's written, for example. Which that's not the kalam that the scholars are talking about, what's written. When you hear it then, when you detect what's mansub and you detect what's marfu' and you detect what's majroor by the sounds, this gives the Arabic language very high versatility. Because of this, i'rab makes Arabic not very dependent on word order. English language, for example, is much more dependent on word order for the lack of what would show you what's a subject or an object otherwise. Sometimes you have to put things in a certain order because you have no other way to show the relationship in the sentence. In Arabic, that could happen where you must adhere to certain word order so that you can show the relationship between the words. But that's going to be in cases where, like, all the words are ending in alif, for example. So there's no way to show the signs on the end of the words. And then again, sometimes the meaning will still show, and then you'll be able to shift them around. So, i'rab is the changing of the endings of the words. Why would they change? لاختلاف العوامل الداخلة عليها, because of the varying agents that come upon them within the sentence, seeking them. Some words seeking out other words, because that's their function. لفظا أو تقديرا. You say those changes or you estimate those changes. So, for example, you could say in Arabic, I'm going to say only 3 words. ضرب زيد عمرا. ضرب زيد عمرا. Zayd hit Amr. That's, by the way, an original word sequence. Verb, doer, receiver. We can take this out of its sequence, out of its original sequence, because we have signs that will alert us to what's what. And so we could say, Zaydun daraba Amran. Zayd hit Amr. And we could say, Amran daraba Zaydun. Amran daraba Zaydun. So someone thinks in English, that might perplex him. Amran daraba Zaydun. Zayd hit Amr, or Amr Zayd hit. Amr Zayd hit. You could say Zaydun Amran daraba. You could say Amran Zaydun daraba. And maybe you can say more than that. If I had a very mathematical mind, I think I'll just be able to say all the scenarios quick and run them down. But I have to think about that. I don't want to take the time. Now, we're not saying, though, that all those sentences mean the same thing.
No.
So they do have a difference between them. And the difference then becomes, where's the emphasis? Where's the focus? Then that takes you into which science? Balagha.
No.
So those words change because their endings change because of the differing agents that come upon them. لفظا أو تقديرا. So let's maybe get some kind of an idea here. What are we talking about? You say ضرب, he hit. This necessitates a hitter and one who was hit. The meaning itself necessitates that. So this verb, this act itself then has 2 powers. It has the power to make something in a state of rafa' as its doer. So it's seeking out a doer to give it a dhamma. And it has the power to put something into a state of nasb as its receiver. So it's seeking out a receiver to give it a fatha. So you say, ضَرَبَ زَيْدٌ عَمْرًا. Or you can flip it all around whatever way you want. That verb is going to keep his power. In the case of this verb, though, that's not all across the board absolute statement. لفظا أو تقديرا. So you're going to pronounce that change at the end of the word, or you're going to estimate it. The origin is to pronounce that change. So you say, Qama Zaydun. Zayd stood. Ra'aytu Zaydan. I saw Zayd. Marartu bi Zaydin. I passed by Zayd. Also, what this means is that a sentence, and I suppose this is a universal property of language, a sentence is prepared for certain meanings. I mean, a word has a meaning by itself, but a sentence has general meanings that are waiting to be filled in. So a sentence is going to have a subject, it's going to have a predicate, it's going to have a verbal object, it's going to have a prepositional object. So those are meanings that are built into the sentence. You just need to bring the words and put them into the slots you want them. So Zayd is Zayd. His meaning, his fundamental meaning doesn't change, but his meaning within the sentence changes, depending on where you put it, like in the examples we just gave. Now, that's, I imagine, to be something universal, but you know what Arabic has on top of that, on top of words that have their own meanings, and sentences that have meaning slots, if you want, and many of them, by the way, that I haven't found in English. We talked about some of them. Maf'ul li'ajlihi and things like that, maf'ul ma'ahu, etc. Also, Arabic has awzan, patterns. Those patterns have meanings too. So then you'll take root letters that have a meaning, put them into a particular pattern that has a meaning, and now you have that meaning. You customize. Arabic is customizable. And then you put it into a sentence in so many ways, mashallah.